We've just had a couple of American elections where white women were the ones that got toxic. Oh dear, it looks like I'm muted. Audio. That looks right. Is that working? I'm just going to quickly check if it's working, because otherwise that's a pain in the bum and not very helpful. So let me just see. Oh, yes, that's working. Okay. So I just saw in the States that some elections have just been won by folk who are racist, misogynistic, and it was because of white women voting for a candidate who didn't care for everybody. And today I've just heard of another incident where a white woman bypassed a racist issue rather than sit and be uncomfortable. So I wanted to just speak about this. Throughout my life, I have just found racism abhorrent. And I remember a brother sharing a story about being racist and everybody laughing. And I said, I'm confused. What is the funny part here? Because all I'm hearing is racism. And they were like, oh, and I got scapegoated for standing up. But I was willing to risk that sort of rejection from the group to do the right thing and make a stand. And a lot of other people, white women especially, struggle with that because we're so socialized to be good, sweet, nice, happy, kind, peaceful, grateful, appreciative in order to get scraps of love. And so frequently, white women will opt for being sweet and nice and try to, if there is an issue of racism, will just opt for being sweet and nice rather than actually making a stand. And we really need to make a stand about racism. There was a group that I was in where the majority of us were white, and there was one Black woman, and she described a medical issue where she wasn't referred to a specialist, where the doctors dismissed her pain, and I just called it out and said, this sounds racist. Another white woman in the group said, no, it just, the doctor might not have happened. And I said to her, has the doctor ever not referred you? And she said, no, they always have. And I said, well, this is an issue that Black women have. So do Black men, that their pain is denied. They are referred way less than white women and white men. And it's an issue of racism. For women in pregnancy and birth, there is 4 times the maternal or childbirth deaths in Black women than there is in white women. Racism is a massive issue still today in terms of Black people not getting jobs simply because their name is different. I'm very curious as to what's going to happen to both my children because both of them have unusual names. So it'll be interesting to see if they don't get jobs or positions because they have different names, unique sounding names that are not white English names. So, racism is everywhere, but frequently people who are Black or brown in white spaces experience microaggressions. And as white women, we need to be aware of it and we need to call it out. And in order to do that, we need to get uncomfortable with ourselves and find our inner voices to be able to share instead of trying to quickly shift the conversation around to get away from the uncomfortableness. Unless we address it and we change how Black people are treated, this will perpetuate. So the ways that you can tell if racism is happening around you is a Black person being silenced? Are they being told to be quiet, or that their issue shouldn't be addressed? Are they not taken seriously? Are they spoken over? Are they criticized for what they're saying? Are people getting louder around them to shout them out because they're treating them like they know nothing? Are they being tone policed? If they have been treated in a racist manner and they are angry, rightly so, are they told they should be nicer about it? Are they being scapegoated, where everybody is blaming them for the issues that are happening when it's not their issue, and they are bringing it to be, they're just being the messenger and being told that they're wrong? If you experience this around you, instead of waiting until the Black person gets upset, you need to make a stand and say, this is not okay. This is not all right, and this needs to change. And it's not comfortable. And it might mean that people judge you. But unless we do that, people won't face themselves, and racism will perpetuate, and people will be harmed and hurt. And it's not okay. It is extremely subtle, but it's deeply permeating. The other ways that you can see it is if they're treated with contempt. So people sigh when they speak, they eye roll, they brush them aside, they respond sarcastically. That contempt comes out of racism. The impact of that, you can look up research on contempt, and the issue and the challenge of contempt is that it breaks down your immune system, which gives you more colds and flus, more illness. It makes you discombobulated, unable to think properly. And that's what people who are Black are experiencing due to the racism and microaggressions around them. And unless we call it and name it, it will continue. So as a white woman, what can you do when you see racism around you? First, you need to breathe and regulate yourself so that you can stand up for other people. Here's the thing. I come home and I am still white. I can turn around and go, it doesn't matter to me, that this is happening. I can just come home and ignore it. That isn't the experience of a Black person. Wherever they go, they will still be Black. So I can take a day off from fighting racism or speaking about it because it's only if I initiate it. For somebody who is Black, they are experiencing that day after day, having microaggressions of people who have been seeped in racism and don't even realize how that contempt is leaking out of them. And how it often leaks out is in double binds, where somebody will be smiley and nice, but their behavior will be digging and cold. And they will go, but I'm always so sweet to you. I don't know what you're saying, but they'll brush in front of them or cut them off or silence them. And we need to notice how that behavior leaks out of us and ensure that we are facing ourselves as white people to notice the racism inside of us. Because the majority of us, I know for sure, I was steeped in racism growing up. It was all around me. And so I have to notice the racist thoughts that don't happen often. I've always been somebody who stands up. But every now and again, I can hear my father's voice in my head. And I have to notice it and call it out. And a white woman, I see a comment here of saying white women are the vehicles of racism. They're transported to their children and wider society. It's uncomfortable and they choose to laugh it off and be nice and brush it aside. Yes, exactly. And it's totally uncomfortable and wrong. And there's so many incidents, and I don't want to name people. There's so many incidents I've experienced that I've just been utterly stunned by growing up in ways people were racist. And I would just go, if you were Black, would you like to be treated like this? So if you think that's okay and how you're treating, would you be happy to be Black tomorrow? No. Well, then why would you be okay with that behavior? It's unacceptable. I know for me, I'm a bit more of a tiger in dealing with it because I'm just horrified that people think it's okay. So I want to just talk about how to make a stand as a white woman who has been socialized. Like, my brothers could get angry and racist and everything else, but as girls, we had to be good and nice and sweet. And me standing up and using my voice meant that I have no connection with my family. I have been estranged for 10 years, but dealing with racism and sexism and standing up and making a difference is more important to me than love that has that energy too. I remember my mom saying that she went to a wedding where somebody was marrying a Black woman, and she said, "Oh, it was really uncomfortable." I was like, why? But that inbred racism, she could feel inside of herself, that uncomfort. So in order to do that, you want to regulate, take a breath. You want to know what matters, that unless everybody is treated equally, we are all suffering. If you're walking past and ignoring somebody else's suffering, there's a part of us that suffers. And we need to make a stand. We cannot sit back and watch other people being treated like that. And one of the ways that so often people will do it is go, but I didn't do anything, or I didn't see it, or let's just choose to be happy. That is bypassing, and it's not okay. If you see something racist, you need to say it, and you need to share what needs to happen. So for instance, if you see somebody who is a Black person who is speaking out, and somebody says, no, we're not going to deal with that, you need to say, her voice matters. I'd like to hear what she has to say, please. And if people talk over somebody who is Black, you need to say, sorry, I missed what you said. Could you say it louder, please? If they are angry and other people are tone policing, you need to say, your anger is totally legitimate. I so get it. I wouldn't like to be treated like that. So that you are validating the pain and anger, you are empowering their voice, and you are turning to them and saying, you matter, you're a part of this, we are all equals in this, and it's not okay that you're being treated that way. To do that, we have to get better at being uncomfortable in ourselves, and finding our voice, and overcoming that thought that we might not be loved if we stand up, but it's way better to do the right thing than to get a scrap of love. That's my opinion anyway. I'm curious to hear your stories of standing up as a white woman against racism, and I'm curious too to hear your struggles of what that is like and why you struggle to stand up. And there are specific places that you can see it happening. You can see it happening at the shops and stand up. You can see it happening in medical situations. If you are somebody who is in a white space, like a business space, and there are one or two Black people, watch and notice they will be experiencing racism. And you need to be their advocate and empower them to have their voice and be met and heard and valued. They will be more interrupted. They will be spoken over. And you need to manage that so that they are comfortable and easy, rather than you sitting back and leaving them being uncomfortable. If we don't do that, racism will perpetuate, and we need to be creating a more unified, loving earth so that everybody is welcome and treated with love and care and acceptance. So I'm curious to hear, share in the comments what you can do, where you have seen racism, where you have stood up, where you struggle with it, so that I can address that. I think this is one of the most important things that we can do. As a therapist, I'm obviously helping people. I specialize in people who've had trauma. But one of the reasons I do this work is not so that people become complacent and sweet and just create their own happy, nice lives. I do this too because I want people to find a voice and make a stand to make the world a better place, to make it more loving, to make it more inclusive, to make it more diverse, because in our diversity, we all thrive, and we grow spiritually and creatively, and we welcome everybody who is different. So I'm sending you love, and come and share with me where you have stood up against racism so that everybody is included and loved.